I don't want to make this video, but I have to. I won't live long enough to write all the books I want to write. And I'm not even a very good writer, you know. But occasionally, I hit the mark. By chance, by grace, by luck, by good fortune, whatever you want to call it. This is my main concern, and I'll be perfectly honest. I want to not say everything I know in this book. I want to make a white bread slam dunk. Is there a food that everybody likes? Is there a food everybody can agree on? Most people can agree on strawberries. Most people, not everybody. People say everybody loves pizza. Since I've become vegan, more or less, something sneaks in every now and then because I don't read the fine print. You know, I bought some cauliflower crust pizzas the other day that it said cauliflower dairy free, and I was like, I'm in. So I bought the crust, bought some sauce, bought some vegan cheese. Well, as it turns out, the cauliflower crusts have egg. Fuck you, motherfucking cauliflower pizza company motherfuckers, putting that dairy-free shit on there. You tricked me. You got me. I ate them anyway. Not that I should have. So, we live in this murderous, butcherous world, and maybe there's a little leeway. It's funny, if you're a bishop in the Catholic... Now, I've said it before, I'll stand behind the Catholic Church as an institution. But some of the policies, So if you're a bishop who molested kids, and it's always molesting boys. You never hear about the priests who molest girls, right? Because every priest only molests a boy. But anyway, now, and I also believe in forgiveness, you know, so I'm not out for retribution. But as an institution, and we shouldn't underestimate the pressure upon the Pope from the bishops, never mind from up there and from down there. And is the Pope the vicar? What's the vicar? The vessel. Mary's the vessel. Papa. Mama. I've been at death's door a couple times. I wasn't crying for my dad. George Floyd weren't crying for his dad. Anyway. It's interesting that if you're a bishop who molested children, you're like retired. You're just kind of like shoved aside and out of the limelight, but you're still like sanctified. But if you're a bishop who ordains a woman priest, then you're excommunicated. But I'm still down with, I'm still down with the church, and I still suffer the the plague of mind that traditionalists suffer in my lack of love and in my forthright judgment of that which is not me. I've become, and as it turns out, I've always been much more conservative than I ever thought I was. I'll leave that at that. But yeah, what I'm really concerned about is making this book. This is what I'm going to work on over the next year. This and I'm gonna further develop the Raphael prophecy. Not that it's mine to develop, but develop the interpretation, the symbolic breakdown. But specifically over this next year, I really, because Bosch, Hieronymus Bosch, Garden of Earthly Delights, it's not my main subject, but I have to break it down. It's a prophetic work, a time travel work, that describes aviation history, which is the reason why all the people are drawn like he's in the 8th grade, except for one. There's one image that looks like a Maxfield Parrish image, and you have to have a pretty subtle eye to see it. It's in the lower right-hand corner. What's essentially a short-haired woman reaching up with her arms and her legs. Her back's on the ground. It stands out as an image. Of all those people, she's like a Maxfield Parrish, Norman Rockwell type figure, very subtly. Well, everyone else is kind of like from the comics. Anyway, but the birds are like dead nuts. And if you look at if you look at the Adoration of the Magi by Hieronymus Bosch, it's just like high Renaissance. It's interesting in both of those paintings, the purely black and white. Hieronymus Bosch paints purely black and white figures within the painting that's so colored, but you can't really see them because so much shit's going on. But if you take things on a case-by-case basis, then it's like, those dudes are all black and white. What's going on with that? Anyway, I'm not going to get into that now, but Garden of Earthly Delights is a symbolic it's not even prophetic. It's like time travel clairvoyant breakdown of many things, many things, but specifically of the history of aviation. And the key, Kiwi, the key is there's a little bird with a bow on it on the right hand panel. Well, I'm sorry if you're looking this way, because I'm looking like in a mirror now as I record this, but I know once it's a video it'll be flipped. So if you look all the way, okay, I'm using my left hand, but it'll look like you're right. All the way on the right side, there's this bird with a bow on its shoulder with ice skates on. That's the key. Even though just a little bit upwards. There's the picture of the man through the hole, which is the key. Different key, but the same key. It has a lot to do with oh, gotta plug it in, plug it in, plug it in. Man, I got 25% right. It has a lot to do. Now, here's one of the things, right? If I say Wright brothers, what was it, Dayton, Ohio? They had a bike shop in Dayton, Ohio. Now, if you read the literature, it's like you got to read the words, but you got to look at the maps too. So if you read the literature, it was like, well, they traveled from Dayton, Ohio to Kitty Hawk, where the conditions would be right. No. Wait till the day. It's going to be long. It has to do with Blackbeard and St. Agnes. Yeah, motherfucker. And fucking Jamestown and fucking Roanoke. That's why they went there. Whether they knew it or not. But it's pretty fucked up that they traveled from Dayton, Ohio to fucking Kitty Hawk. Or, as you're looking at it, Dayton, Ohio to Kitty Hawk. That's fucked up. There's a bazillion other places they could have went. Now, first of all, they didn't go to Kitty Hawk. They called it Kitty Hawk. Where did the... Now, also, they weren't the first people to fly. It was some English dude whose name has the word string in it, which is also encoded in Bosch. Because if you take that little bird and circle the 4 people, there's people on what look like some kind of like Nordic sled of a single skate. One's on the ice, one's below the ice, but then you move over and then you have someone winding a hurdy-gurdy, and then someone going like this on a harp with strings. But anyway, the first was unmanned flight. It was a steam, I believe it was a steam engine in England. And I don't know if his name was Stringmeyer or String something. And then the first manned flight was Kitty Hawk, and they had pictures. There weren't any photographs of the English one yet. But anyway, it wasn't Kitty Hawk. Do you know the name? Do you know the name of the actual place the Wright brothers flew? We all know Kitty Hawk. We all know the Wright brothers. We all know Kitty Hawk. If you've never heard of the Wright brothers or Kitty Hawk, I'm sorry. But maybe ask a friend and see if they know. Because pretty much everybody knows Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers. Not many know maybe Dayton, I think it's Dayton, I might even have it wrong. But wherever the fuck, Wright brothers. Wright brothers bike shop. Where the fuck they have their bike shop? Bike shop. Yeah, Dayton, Ohio. It's still there today. So they traveled from Ohio, not just, see now when we think of South Carolina, or when we think of like Kitty Hawk or whatever, North Carolina, South Carolina, where's Kitty Hawk? I don't know much, man. I couldn't do any of this shit without Google. Gushy. North Carolina, sorry. I'm not good with geography. That's why I bought these maps. So that, like, when I had a question, I didn't have to Google it. I could just, like, look. I should have just got up and looked. But anyway, so when we think of North Carolina, we think of the big chunk of the state. But rarely do we think to one of the most important strips of land in history. The curved, like, islands or whatever you want to call them off the coast. So, like, here's North Carolina, and then there's this bow of islands. And within them you have, okay, so here's where Blackbeard crashed Queen Anne's Revenge. Right here. Here's Kitty Hawk. Way the fuck off the coast, man. Here's Roanoke. Or in the neighborhood. You know, here's Roanoke. Here's Jamestown. James, named after King James. James, King, named after King James. The crash of Queen Anne's Revenge. Blackbeard the pirate. Some pretty famous people. Blackbeard is the most famous pirate. King James is the most famous king because of the King James Bible. Roanoke's pretty damn famous because of Roanoke. And right there is where the first manned flight happened by the Wright brothers. My first last name was Wright before I was adopted, by the way. That'll come in important later when we're talking about Hieronymus Bosch. Whatever. And then, do you know the name of the fucking place where the Wright brothers actually flew their first plane? Now, if there's not a conspiracy in history, right, where did the Wright brothers fly? The first fucking flight, aviation, where did it happen? Kitty Hawk. Kitty Hawk. Nope. It was near Kitty Hawk. It was on Kill Devil Hill. Kill Devil Hill! Like, if I were making a title for a book, well, then again, it depends on the content, you know. But, like, if I were trying to sell something, and isn't that super interesting that history collapsed upon Kitty Hawk? Well, the truth of it is Kill Devil Hill. Alright, that's not what I was going to talk about. What I was going to talk about, Kill Devil motherfucking Hill. It's also interesting that it's Killkitt. Flip the T's upside down, flip the L's upside down. Elongate and truncate. That's pretty interesting. Alright. Anyway, in that spirit, killing the devil. Gonna give a little shout out to the blood, the sacrifice, because that's what it's all about. I've been gnawing on this same piece of bread for like a couple weeks. I don't give a fuck. Body, blood. Is it real? Oh, in the beginning was the Word. Is that real? the word, the logos, the pattern, the word, the script, the story, the explanation. Anyway, I already know I'm going to be super embarrassed tomorrow, but whatever. Because I just want to work on this. So I've been listening to this audiobook. I had to search a little bit for one that I felt like I could listen to, because, to be honest, like, the Bible sucks, man. Reading the Bible sucks. And, like, the more you learn about things, and the more you learn about symbolism, and the more you get into the Strong's Concordance, and, like, the Greek and Hebrew breakdown, and then the Paleo-Hebrew, and then the, Coptic, or this, that, whatever, plus the symbolism and all that, then it becomes more interesting. So, anyway, I got one that's like this, it's theatrical, it has music, it has different actors, like, playing the voices of the different characters and so on, and it's still a little hokey, and, but I need that story, that mythos element, I need that word, I need that English word to go along with the Greek logos. I haven't looked up yet what the Hebrew or the Aramaic equivalency of that word of the logos is yet. So I'm glad I just said that, because then maybe now I'll remember it and look it up. Should I look it up? I think I should. I'll annotate it later, because I have some ground to cover, because what I wanted to talk about was Moses. And anyway, it's like the Word of Promise audio Bible, and it's quite good. Well, what I should say is, like, I found Genesis to be, now, supposedly, like Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus are associated with Moses as being the author. Well, which Moses? You could say John Smith is the author of such and such. Okay. Or like Martin Luther. Well, who are we talking about? Are we talking about Martin Luther? Or are we talking about Martin Luther King Jr.? MLK? Melchizedek? It's also interesting that basically, like, in the 60s, the whole bag condenses upon from a very naive, which is my standpoint, but it's important the way naive standpoints collapse. Super important. And whether it's a conspiracy or a synchronicity, good and bad conspiracies both utilize synchronicity. And sometimes when something seems like a conspiracy, it's actually just a synchronicity. But those who have an extra portion manipulate them, for good or bad. But it's interesting that Malcolm X, MLK, and MLK. But or I guess maybe here's a better example, because I was talking about like Martin Luther and Martin Luther King, right? So what I'm trying to refer to is like in the Bible in Exodus. I think it's Exodus 1:11 where they're talking about, because I'm only in the first few chapters. I'm trying to study because I'm trying to make this fucking bag. I already get the moral of the story. I already get the point. I don't even want to study the Bible. It just makes me crazy. I've been listening to Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers for the last 2 days, and it's just like I already want to kill myself, man. It's like I can't understand why people would like put Moses, no offense Moses, but like I can't understand why people would want to put Moses on such a high pedestal, because if you read the words just as they are, now there's some nice things later on, I guess, in the latter parts of Leviticus maybe, or in the early parts of Numbers that are nice. But besides that, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, it's just like the most murderous, butcherous fucking, the sweet aroma. I mean, how many fucking times do they say fucking burnt offerings, the sweet aroma? Kill that motherfucker, kill that motherfucker, firstborn, 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 firstborn. It's just like, God, give it a fucking rest, man. I have an explanation for that from my worldview, but it's going to take some time to get there. And I don't think I'm going to be able to put that in here, because it ain't white bread. But I'll put it here. So if someday when you come upon my white bread, you can look back to the fucking grain and the roots. And maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, I don't know. But I gotta try. Have to. Oh yeah, so where it talks about like, I think it's 111 where it talks about like, build, and that's why like, because Moses is associated with Ramses II. And they found seaweed in Ramses II's body. A lot of biblical folk are like, oh, that's because he drowned in the Red Sea. It's because Egyptians ate fucking seaweed. Sea moss, fucking all that shit. Just like Dr. Sebi. Because it's got all them fucking minerals and all that shit. That's why Ramses had shit in his stomach. So now, if we assume that because of the oral tradition and so on, never mind, because this is all post facto, after the fact, we're working with very little things and people trying to put together the puzzle. Well, now we have more information. You as a dumb fuck, right? I'm a dumb fuck. And I have more information at my fingertips than every PhD did 30 years ago. Or just about. I can make connections. But now people, scholars, people in the priests of their high positions of PhD. Now, don't get me wrong. None of us could have done any of this without them or without that class. So I'm not harshing on that class. Just as we, in the quote-unquote lower class, even though I'm only in the kind of lower class of America, even though I'm still in the 1 percentile of the world, I'm still, if you're in the lower class in America, the upper lower class or the lower middle class, you're still in the 1% of the world, ever. But, man, I hope I have time for this. Fuck. Because I want to talk about Moses and Akhenaten. So when you do like the time of the Bible and all this shit back, people collapse upon Ramses, right? Because it uses the word Ramses in the Bible. But if whoever wrote this was after the fact, never mind if whatever that Jewish word means, wherever it really came from, because like even the Pharaoh Ramses, the first or the second, like wherever his name came from, it would have been pre-existing. And it could well mean something else. And what I was thinking of today, because it talked about like Ramses and what is it? Exodus 1:11. I'm not sure if I can find it real quick. Exodus Python. I think it's Python. Python. Exodus 1:11. It's also interesting that it's 1:11, because because the slogan of the vegan cross is Isaiah 111. Isaiah flies in the face of fucking Moses. Not really, but it flies in the face of the words that Moses gave. Alright, I also got to get to Jehovah. But, okay, Exodus 1:11. 1:11. Yeah, Python. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Now, Pithom is like this, they haven't found it, they don't know where it is, you know. But like it goes back further in time. So it's kind of like, okay, say everything in history was deleted except for one video from Fox News, right? So I saw this video from Fox News a little while back, and it was talking about, and it's been a popular tagline of these days when Republicans say, Republicans, the party of Reagan and Lincoln. What do Reagan and Lincoln have in common? They're both good storytellers. They relate to everybody. And that's just about it. Not really, but... Though there's a million, like, psyop ways where that's a really good quote. But anyway, if that were the only clip that survived, you know, say there's some big catastrophe, people think everything's all up in the cloud and that what we save will be saved for forever. Never mind when Hoover Dam blows, or when fucking Niagara Falls goes, or when the San Andreas fucking fault line fucking goes up, or, you know, whatever. And people think everything's all satellites. Meanwhile, there's like one little itty bitty fucking, or a couple little bitty itty bitty fucking, what do they call it, optic, not a wire, but a fiber, optical fiber, whatever, across the Atlantic Ocean, which is where, like, computer data between America and Europe, basically, like, all these fucking gigabytes, terabytes, quadribytes, I don't know what they call them beyond terabytes, but it's all going through this little fucking thing. But anyway, if that were the only thing to survive after a major catastrophe, people might associate Reagan and Lincoln. Or as me, you know, meanwhile, whoever that commentator was speaking after the fact. So if we consider this as having been written after the fact, or if we consider the word Ramses as having some other etymology that we just don't have the information for, because people say there's no evidence. There's no evidence. There's no historical evidence for Moses, right? I'm just getting this off my chest because maybe there's something to it. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just complete and total horseshit. But if we don't make these connections in the spirit of seeking the truth, like, am I probably wrong? Yeah, probably. But is my spirit seeking the truth? Yes. Do I want answers? Yes. A book this big in the world, like psychically, extra-physically, quantumly, like however you want to slice it. The dark energy and the dark matter, the tachyons and the neutrinos, like however you want to slice it. There's unidentifiable information processes. Eureka. The aha moment. You've had it, I've had it. Right? Where's that come from? Oh, it's the subconscious. Well, maybe it's superconscious. It's unconscious, whether it be sub or super. And sub-subs and some supers click in the un to the conscious. And bloom in awareness. But anyway. So, I'm just throwing this out there. See something, say something. Because people deride the concept of the American term war on terrorism. But philosophically, that's the war. Because we're fighting terror. We're fighting fear. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Yeah, and fear itself is real. That's what we're fighting. Do I still feel fear? Fuck yeah, every day I'm drenched in it. That's the war I'm fighting. And I have good cause. Look outside at all the animals. What happens when you walk near them? They're gone. Why? Because they live in fear. Why? Because fear pervades. We're the only species who has the luxury, pretty much, of periodically deluding ourselves in fearlessness, whether it be for a minute, an hour, a day, a month, a year, or a lifetime. And thank God. Also goldfish. So. But anyway, what I really wanted to get to, and this is the one thing that I can't let go. Because in Exodus 6, somewhere in there, and I won't remember this tomorrow, so don't think like I know all this shit. I don't. I've just been like steeping myself on it, and like I listen to shit all day at work. I get up in the morning, I Google a few things, and then like, I gotta get to work, and then I fucking drive to work and listen to some audiobooks, and I get to work and I listen to my audiobook, and then I get home, and like tonight I Googled like probably about 150 things. Which is like 150 things, but like, think about it, man. You're just like, what about that? What about that? Okay, what about that? It's just like flipping over stones. Something condenses. But for me, what it was yesterday when, listen, and I'd never heard this term before, super important. And it's the one thing that sticks out, and it's like, I can't make the rest of it fit, but like symbolically, artistically, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But sometimes pictures are linguistic symbols. Okay. So circumcision, huge deal in the Old Testament. Right? Well, it means a lot of things symbolically, and people speak about it symbolically. Circumcision, circumference. But anyway, in Exodus, now, not long after the quote I'm gonna say, because before that it's all just like, must be circumcised, 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 circumcised what? But we all have a notion for what we think that means. Symbolically, it means it means several different things symbolically, right? But at a right in your face level, it means a little bit later on, circumcised heart. Before that, Moses says, I can't, because Moses was raised as an Egyptian. Moses was raised as an Egyptian. Moses was Egyptian now. Now this is where it gets into Akhenaten. He was similar enough to be Egyptian. He might have been a little different, but he was similar enough to be Egyptian. He wasn't cast out right away. It weren't so simple as black and white, so to speak. It's just interesting. Because historically and archaeologically, the archaeologists and so on are like, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. That's where Akhenaten comes in. When in the book of Numbers, I think it's in Numbers, yeah, when they're counting all the people, the tribe of Judah is the biggest tribe, about 70,000, 74,000. There's 600,000 people in the army or whatever, like fighting, like people who can be men who can be brought into the army. There's like 600,000 people, so there's like over 1 million. That would mean there's, because if you include women and children, that's over 1 million Jewish people. That's fucking huge. That ain't just like a small band of tribes floating through the fucking desert. That's a fucking nation, big time. Like, that's a big fucking thing. It's the population of New Hampshire. It's bigger than the population of Vermont. You know? Or Vermont. But you know, when we watch these movies and there's like 100,000 feet, fucking 1 million motherfucking people. 1 million people cross the Red Sea. What? But anyway, the big word. When I heard it, my ears went, what you say? And I bet you never heard it. Just like you never heard of Kill Devil Hill, which is where the first human flight known in human history occurred. The first human flight in human history occurred where? You're going to say Kitty Hawk. You'd get it right on your test. If you wrote Kill Devil Hill, which is where it actually happened, you'd get a F. But that's where it happened. Because the teachers don't know. Or maybe they do and they're just playing. I'm sorry I'm being like that. Trust me, I'm being played with. I'm gonna get my dick pounded tomorrow for fucking saying that. God's gonna hammer down on me and be like, you fucking. But I'm just trying to play and have a little fun. But yeah, this is the thing that made my ears perk up when I was listening to Exodus, because I'd never heard it before. I'd heard of the Red Sea, part in the Red Sea. I'd heard it called part in the Red Sea, even though in Hebrew it's the reed or rushes, reeds, those things that grow in marshes and estuaries. The Reed Sea. It was only European countries who called the Red Sea, so they say. You know what the name now? These were Jews living in Egypt, according to the Bible, after Joseph. It's also interesting why the Egyptians didn't eat with Joseph and Jacob and their family and considered them an abomination, and why they considered shepherds an abomination. I'll get to that some other time. But it has to do with the vegan fucking cross. But anyway. The Egyptian word. So it's just like, okay, so you have all these quote unquote Israel. Okay. When Moses meets God, I think at the burning bush, maybe not at the burning bush, but one of the times when Jesus is face to face with God or whatever, God says that his name is Jehovah, though Jacob didn't know it. Like, I forget who else he names, but he names a couple other people in Genesis, and he's like, yeah, Jacob didn't know that it was my name, but that was my name. Yet earlier in the Bible, it quotes, though, it says the name Jehovah. But then God tells Moses, yeah, they didn't know that was my name, but that's who I was. Very interesting. So that would mean that there was a different name or a different language, something else that was talking about Jehovah. That would mean that whatever the texts were that were referenced, whatever the oral tradition was, it means that all that shit was written after the fact, if we believe the chronology of the Bible. It means that Jacob didn't call, where it says Jehovah, as it's associated with Jacob or Joseph or whoever, or Adam or whoever, that if we believe Moses, the lawgiver, that's not the name they call him. And that's from the book. So, is it logical to believe in the Bible or disbelieve in the Bible? Its efficaciousness across time it's logical to study it. To my mind, it's logical to be, whatever. But all right, where was I going with that? I might have to annotate some things later because I've gone off on several different trails. Oh yeah. So like in America, right? So slaves were taken from Africa to America, all over. Early on in the Bible, there were Egyptian servants of Hebrews, before we get to the part where there wasn't even a term Jews back then, but before the tribes of Israel were servants to Pharaoh. Anyway, in America, in the United States, all over the Americas, all over Europe, there were African slaves. I'm just going to drop this in. It's also my contention that there were actual Hebrew, Messianic, ascended masters among them, only pretending to be slaves. Not all of them, but among them. It's one of my contentions specifically about George Washington, that he wasn't running the show. that there were a group among his slaves who were actually like apostolic, like saints, like 1,000-year-old, like the real fucking deal, Nubian, Nefertiti, motherfucking the real deal, running the show, guiding his hand. Anyway, actually, I don't even think it. I know, I just have to. I'm saying this now because I've talked about it before, but like I'm saying this now because now is the revelation, and it has to happen quick, man. It's not quick enough for me, but historically it will be quick. Another 20, 30, 40 years. It won't be the end of the deal, but the biggest change ain't gonna be fucking quantum computing, I'll tell you that. Because the 7 generations beyond quantum computing are already here. Anyway. Ugh. The quote-unquote Israelites, Judeans of quote-unquote Egypt, were Egyptianized, were Mayatinized. In the same way that, like, if you're a hardcore, like, say you're a hardcore Black Panther, right? You're still more like, say you're a hardcore anti-white Black Panther. Say you're like a racist, hardcore anti-white Black Panther. Forgive my terminology, like I don't understand, but like try to go with the theme. Understand that I have a very truncated view of the world. If you're a hardcore, like, Black Power, fuck whitey type person, like, you're still more white than you are tribal African, right? I don't mean anything bad by that. I know I'm getting it wrong. I'm just trying to make, like, a very loose analogy with the best language that I can summon. And what I'm saying is that, like, that would be kind of like the same thing. Like, there wasn't an Israel before Jacob. So the Genesis, the early chapters of Genesis aren't Jewish. There's no Jewishness until Judah. There's no Jewish till Jacob. Israel is Jacob, and Judah is Jacob's son. So the whole Israeli-Jewish gig is pretty well tied up in that, and everything before that ain't. But then as far as Jehovah goes, Yahweh, Yahweh-Vaheh, or Yahweh Shin-Vaheh, or Yehuda, who Moses counted as 70,000, 74,000, didn't exist before that. But to a large degree, it didn't exist after that. kind of like in the creation of America, in the creation of the United States of America. Like the Declaration of Independence was made, the Constitution was made, and then it took years, a decade, a couple decades, for the states to ratify it. So it was in this gray area of it. It was this blend. It seeped across time. There wasn't like a, and that's the same with all the shit in the book. So what I'm saying about that is the thing about Ramses. People associate Moses with Ramses, but Moses might not have been associated with Ramses. Ramses may well have meant something else, especially in vernacular, right? I think I wrote this, well, I definitely wrote this, yeah, I wrote this in here, but I hadn't mentioned it yet. Like, I don't mean to be mean. I don't mean to be mean. I don't mean to be mean to you. I don't mean to be mean. Don't let me get your goat. Can't make heads or tails of it. Anyway. We think of the movies and we think of the paintings about Moses, but like, stuff it back. Now, some of the movies had a little bit of shit right about Moses, all dressed up as an Egyptian, right? Moses would have been raised in the kingship, in the priest class, would have known languages. Was Hebrew even created at that time? Was Hebrew as we know it even used at that time? There was the Egyptian, there was the Coptic. So like the Paleo-Hebrew, the Coptic, the Egyptian, the Paleo-Hebrew, the Coptic. And as we know, like, Israel isn't a race. It's a people. Just like the United States. The United States is a perfect example. It's a people. We're a people. The people. America isn't a race. It's a people. It's an idea. Anyway, I'm not going to get... I've already taken way too long on it. I'm barely going to get there, but I'm going to get there. Akhenaten is famously androgynous. And these days, people call androgynes intersex. This is the problem with some of the things. It's great that we're redefining language. I have a problem with the way in which we're redefining. I don't have a problem with redefining language. Not at all. My solution, who am I? My solution, and there probably is a better one, but man means hand. Man means making, and hands are controlled by the imagination. Men, meant, mind, plural, mind, plurality of ideas, shared mind. Man, singular, man, hand, from the word manus. All men, all minds, in one man, from many one. Telepathy, interconnectedness, spirituality, one kingdom, one God. Man, hand, woman, woman. So people are trying to redefine the word woman, but see, what the problem with the way that we're redefining the language is we're putting a Y in the M when womb means that the woman has a womb. We're denying motherhood once again. people don't realize, because they don't understand enough about etymology, is that you're destroying the mother. You're killing women. Women and hermaphrodites are losing, right? The specific fight of the language is killing the mother and hermaphrodites. Women and hermaphrodites have always been the most subjugated. Always, throughout history, even today. So I don't have a problem. And also, changing everything to it and theirs, you're becoming an it. You don't want to become an it legally. It's our property. You want to be a man. All people are man. What we call women are women because they have a womb. Don't deny the womb. Don't. It's the most fucking important thing. The W-O before man isn't like, oh, woman comes before man. It's more like doctor. It's more like a title. The W-O are letters of distinction. You're special because you're tapped into the fucking vacuum. You're tapped into that place where nothing but God is. Creation. Redefine the language, yes, but redefine. People would say I'm a man. Not many. Be a man. I'm trying. My solution to that is man. Man is all people. Woman is quote unquote female. Man is he-male. What they call intersex. And this is another thing about the movement of language. You're trying to scientificize or whatever, and like intersex, that relates back to the Latin and the Roman language. Because of sex meaning six, and sex is meaning like the sex. So we're going to say that intersex is a more scientific use of language. Yeah, it's more scientific because everything's all about like spreading my genes and sex, and it's all about spreading my genes. So we hump and we mate for genes and so on. Never mind the fact that, like, love, hermaphrodites, Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Oh, that's racist to call someone a hermaphrodite. That's such a horrible thing. And that's another thing. My proposal for what we call intersex is her man, after her man, Aphrodite's. Her man, not a wo man, because there's no womb. Simple. Fixes it. And to say that intersex, because then it's like between sex. So then all of a sudden it becomes sexual, and that's more scientific. That's more equitable. That's more equitable to call people intersex instead of hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite. Love. Okay, so sex is more, to define something by sex, which is associated with sex, is better than love. That's better? I don't have a problem with redefining the terms. And I don't have a problem with destroying and crumbling the fucking tradition. But not all the way down. Not in every respect. Not everything. Intersex is, at best, it's a sterile, lifeless fucking word. At worst, you're making it all about sex instead of love. Be fucking poetic about it, man. Hermaphrodite, the androgyne. It's a beautiful fucking word. So that comes to Akhenaten, the androgyne. So, people have heard about Akhenaten. I'm not going to get too much into it. Married to Nefertiti, a Nubian. Jews didn't like Moses. He had to speak through Aaron. So now it's all Moses. If you're Jewish or if you're Christian, you're, Moses. They didn't like Moses. They were mad at Moses. They pretty much mostly fucking hated Moses. The pharaohs hated Moses. The Jews hated Moses. The Philistines hated Moses. Everybody fucking hated Moses. Same went for Akhenaten. Akhenaten, Imhotep, Amenhotep the third. Akhenaten was Amenhotep the fourth. Amenhotep the third. All those family portraits and all the sculptures and paintings and shit, Akhenaten weren't there. It's as if Akhenaten weren't treated like one of the family. And Akhenaten, the arc of Akhenaten. Here's the gig. Akhenaten left Egypt. Moved to Armana or whatever. Akhenaten left the capital. Changed his name from Amenhotep the fourth to Akhenaten. Made it one god. With some distinction between Amun-Ra. Essentially what Akhenaten did was took the whole Amun-Ra thing away from the sun, while still leaving for those who were just totally dedicated to the sun, was like, yeah, okay, you can still worship the sun disk. But the Aten part of it was not the same thing as the sun. So it was one god that wasn't the sun god. It was something else. Super important. I wouldn't be talking about any of this because there's connections that can be made through history and there's all this stuff. But Akhenaten was famously androgynous. Big hips, fleshy chest. Basically, people are like, oh, homosexual, all this, that, whatever. Now, was he or wasn't he married to Nefertiti? Another story for another time. But just look at the image. A hermaphrodite. Plain and simple. Why can't people just fucking say it? And then all this shit about, and all these people, it's like you take all these I want you to have your freedom, man. There's also the sorcerers of the Castanedan line. Carlos Castaneda talks about physical women who are spiritually inverted men. Totally different subject, same subject. But anyway, Akhenaten. I gotta say this before I run out of memory. Akhenaten, an androgyne, a hermaphrodite. In Exodus 6, Moses says, "They will not listen to me because of my uncircumcised lips." He says it twice, and as far as I know, it's the only time in the Bible that word comes up. There's also the whole gig with the Red Sea, and that it was really reds and reeds, and that in Egyptian, the Red Sea was called the green space. The The green space is that part of the Nile where all those rivers come apart from each other. That relates back to Genesis. We're putting everything in the Arabian Peninsula. So all those people who are talking about like the Black Hebrews and like all this shit, yeah, Egypt. Also, in the King James Version of the Bible, where if you look back to the work of Smedley that talks about Francis Bacon having his hands on the Bible at the same time of King James and at the same time as Shakespeare, all that shit, print and press. Anyway, in Genesis like 2:13, I think, where it's called Ethiopia, but it was Cush. Bacon and whoever the translators were, the 50 whatever translators, made it Ethiopia. Bacon being basically the father of the scientific revolution. The father, a theologian, a code master, a spy master, all wrapped up with the magic of John Dee, all wrapped up with Shakespeare, all wrapped up with fucking King James. Put Ethiopia in there. I'm saying that's a little bit of like, not even a prophecy, right? Because Edi Pi and all that, that's associated with the oiler. But it says compasseth. Gihon. Gihon, if you take out the I and the O, is G-H-N. Good. Goshen. Where Moses was hanging out. But anyway, because we call Ethiopia the country Ethiopia, but it was called Cush, which is more like in the mid-Nile region. And the Red Sea, the Jewish word, I forget what the transliteration of it is at the moment, but it means reeds and rushes. The papyrus reeds that were used for papyrus are mostly extinct in Egypt, except for, and I think it's like Damietta something, I can't remember, but it's up in, because the Nile comes up and then it spreads out into all these branches. And one of the places, like if you're in Egypt and you're talking about reeds, what's the most famous reed going to be? The cypress reed that's used for fucking making papyrus. One of the only places this day that it exists is right by the fucking ocean, right? So if you're talking about splitting the sea, estuaries, the Reed Sea. So if we're talking scientifically, now I'm not saying this is it, I'm not denying that, I'm just saying maybe there's something to this. When the tide goes out, so if you're crossing an estuary when the tide goes out, so if you're Moses, who was a king, or who lived with the kings, he lived as a prince, and you were able to travel because you had the time, and you're leading a bunch of slaves who ain't never been nowhere except for fucking making their fucking bricks, and you know about the tide, you can bring people to the ocean, people who've never been to the fucking ocean, to the Reed Sea, to where the reeds met the sea, in the estuaries of the Mediterranean. This day, one of the only places that it grows is right there, where the estuaries of, where the Nile, I don't know what it's called, but where the Nile spreads out into all those little rivers, where it's all fucking green, the green space, what the Egyptians called the green space, all that shit's green. Around the Nile, yeah, it's a little bit green, but all that shit's green where it spreads out, the green space, not the green line, the green space. What in Hebrew is the Reed or the Rush Sea. So, did Moses go this way or that way? Just asking the question. So if we're looking for evidence, who fled Egypt? Akhenaten. this is the clincher. I wouldn't be saying any of this if this weren't in the fucking Bible. Moses said they won't believe me because he's an Egyptian, because he's uncircumcised, but specifically what it says in the Bible. This is the big motherfucking thing. Hold on. Uncircumcised lips. I'm all into the symbolic representation. I'm all into the, well, what's that mean? An uncircumcised heart, uncircumcised, you gotta be, what's it mean? What's it mean symbolically? I'm all into that. Love it. Love it. All the, Jungian stuff, like what would Jordan Peterson say about it? What would, this person say? What would Jung say about it? What would Nietzsche say about it? Like, what would Kierkegaard say about it? Like, down with that, Never mind, yeah, what would Anais Nin say about it? I'm down with it. But what do we think about, what's the fact of the matter of circumcision? And if we're talking about circumcision and lips at the same time, in the same word, twice, two, in essentially the same verse, or thereabouts, only time in the Bible about Moses, pretty big fucking figure, uncircumcised lips. Means he's an Egyptian with a dick, and what else he got? Doing. The elephant in the room. Like, you don't even have to be an artist to figure that out. Like, oh, what are, huh. It's right there. In black and fucking white. A hermaphrodite. An androgyne. Who led people into the desert. In the Bible, the people are complaining about only having bread and they want their fucking meat. But they were only given bread. So Moses supposedly gives all this shit about, here's how you kill the lamb and you make the tabernacle and you make the this and you make the that and you make the this and you make the that, and fucking Aaron and, the Levites and the fucking da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's just like kill. Yet at the same time, within that text, it's talking about manna from heaven, right? Only eating fucking grains and this and that. Same thing with Akhenaten. Moses was an Egyptian. He himself said, they ain't gonna listen to me. I'm an Egyptian. And I have uncircumcised lips. Anyway, Akhenaten banned the slaughter of animals, but yet Moses required. The Jews weren't Jews yet. The Jews weren't Jews yet when Moses led the Jews out of Egypt. There was all these tribes. Back in the Old Testament, it says Judah will be the most blessed. When Moses or whoever made the census, the house of Judah had about 74,000 people. And one of the audiobooks I listened to today about Akhenaten said that Akhenaten, because there's Akhenaten and Akhenaten, which was the city today called Armana, it's the Armana letters, written in Coptic. Anyway, the city of Akhenaten, well, I heard some people say, or I heard one audiobook that said it was 20 to 30,000 people, and another audiobook that said it was 70,000 people. God loved Judah most. Why? Because they didn't kill the animals. 600,000 people? 1,000,000 people? There's a lot of story and a lot of history, and if we think critically about it, we can actually put something together that makes sense. I'll get to more of it later. I've talked about some of it before. It's kind of like if you're the president of the United States. If you're the president of skinheads and you're the president of Black Lives Matter, and you genuinely in your heart care, what do you say? And what do you say to who? And how do you construct those pipelines? Having a clearer vision of the future, and of truth and of goodness. But yeah, like I said, I wouldn't have made this whole fucking video today. Total rambling shit, but uncircumcised lips? Akhenaten the androgyne? The heretic of Egypt? One God? One God? I know of no other possible reconciliation at this point. But that would reconcile it. Worth noting, like I said, I really just want to make a slam dunk white bread. You know, some white bread sandwiches ain't nobody gonna fucking deny, man. Right?